Welcome to our captivating journey through the world of English pre-Elizabethan poetry on this YouTube audiobook. In this immersive experience, we'll embark on a voyage back in time to explore the poetic landscapes that flourished before the reign of Queen Elizabeth I. These verses, written in the medieval and early Renaissance periods, lay the foundation for the rich tapestry of English literary heritage. This audiobook is your gateway to a treasure trove of poetic gems that span centuries, reflecting the evolution of language, culture, and artistic expression. From the Old English elegies and ballads to the enchanting Middle English lyrics, we'll traverse the linguistic landscapes that paved the way for the dazzling array of Elizabethan poetry that followed. As we delve into the works of poets like Geoffrey Chaucer, the Pearl Poet, and Sir Thomas Wyatt, you'll witness the transformation of language, themes, and poetic forms. These early poets provided the seeds from which the flowering garden of English literature would eventually bloom. Join us as we navigate the intricate rhyme schemes, vivid imagery, and passionate emotions that define this era's poetry. We'll uncover the themes of courtly love, chivalry, spirituality, and the human experience that these poets masterfully wove into their verses. Our audiobook will not only guide you through the works themselves but also offer insights into the historical contexts that shaped these poets' voices. From the echoes of Anglo-Saxon warriors to the courtly intrigues of the medieval nobility, each poem opens a window into a bygone world brimming with vivid characters and captivating narratives. Whether you are a literature enthusiast, a history buff, or simply curious about the roots of English poetry, our YouTube audiobook on English pre-Elizabethan poetry promises a captivating exploration. So, sit back, relax, and allow the evocative words of these early poets to transport you to a realm where the power of language and imagination knows no bounds. English pre-Elizabethan poetry is a rich tapestry that encompasses the poetic works produced in England before the reign of Queen Elizabeth I, 1558–1603. This era covers a significant span of time, ranging from the Anglo-Saxon period to the early Renaissance, leading up to the illustrious Elizabethan age. This poetry represents the foundations upon which later English literature, including the works of Shakespeare and the Elizabethan poets, would be built. The Anglo-Saxon period, spanning roughly from the 5th to the 11th centuries, boasts a collection of elegies, epics, and religious hymns. Perhaps the most famous work from this time is Beowulf, an epic poem that tells the heroic tale of the warrior Beowulf as he battles monsters and dragons. These early works are often characterized by their oral tradition, emphasizing rhythm, alliteration, and meter, which aided in memorization and recitation. Moving into the Middle English period, the influence of the Norman conquest of 1066 becomes apparent, resulting in a fusion of Anglo-Saxon and Norman French linguistic and literary traditions. Within this milieu, we find the Pearl Poet, an anonymous author known for writing Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, a chivalric romance that explores themes of honor, temptation, and human frailty. This poem also introduces the concept of the bob and wheel, a distinctive stanzic structure. One of the luminaries of this era is Geoffrey Chaucer, often referred to as the father of English literature. His Canterbury Tales is a pinnacle of Middle English storytelling, capturing the diverse voices of pilgrims on a journey to Canterbury Cathedral. Chaucer's skillful characterization, vivid descriptions, and social commentary reveal the complexities of medieval society, while his use of the iambic pentameter showcases the evolving rhythm of the English language. Courtly love and romantic themes were central to pre-Elizabethan poetry. The works of poets like Thomas Wyatt and Henry Howard, Earl of Surrey, marked the transition from the medieval to the Renaissance periods. Wyatt and Surrey introduced the sonnet form to English poetry, adapting the Italian model. Their sonnets explored themes of unrequited love, desire, and the intricate emotional landscape of the human heart. Religious and devotional poetry also held a significant place in this era. The Carmina Burana, a collection of songs and poems, reflects the spiritual yearnings of both clergy and laypeople. These religious verses express a range of sentiments, from reverence and devotion to questioning and lamentation. As we explore English pre-Elizabethan poetry, we witness the evolution of language, form, and themes over centuries. This poetry serves as a mirror reflecting the cultural, social, and spiritual tapestry of its time. Through its artistry, lyricism, and narrative prowess, Pre-Elizabethan poetry lays the groundwork for the unparalleled literary achievements that would come to define the Elizabethan age and beyond. Each poem is a time capsule, preserving the voices and aspirations of generations past, offering us a glimpse into the origins of the English poetic tradition. English pre-Elizabethan poetry unveils a plethora of themes, forms, and influences that shaped the trajectory of English literature. This era witnessed a dynamic interplay between diverse cultures, languages, and artistic traditions, resulting in a rich and varied body of poetic works. The Dream of the Rood, an Old English poem, stands as a unique expression of Christian devotion. This poem personifies the cross as a heroic figure and presents Christ's crucifixion as a triumphant victory. The fusion of Christian themes with Germanic heroic elements reflects the cultural synthesis of the age. Ballads, a form of narrative poetry, emerged during this period as well. These ballads often told stories of love, adventure, and tragedy, and they were frequently passed down through oral tradition. The Child Ballads collection, for instance, showcases a blend of supernatural encounters, historical events, and poignant emotions that captivated audiences across generations. Themes of nature and the natural world found their way into pre-Elizabethan poetry. Poets like John Lydgate and William Langland penned verses that celebrated the beauty of the countryside, reflected on the changing seasons, and contemplated the transient nature of human existence against the backdrop of the enduring earth. The alliterative revival marked a return to the alliterative verse characteristic of Old English poetry. This revival saw poets like William Langland, in Piers Plowman, and the anonymous author of Pearl, employing alliterative techniques to convey moral and spiritual allegories. These works delve into questions of virtue, salvation, and the complexities of human conduct. Poetry of this era was often intertwined with music and performance. Minstrels and troubadours traveled from court to court, using musical accompaniment to enhance the emotional impact of their verses. This marriage of words and melody provided a multisensory experience that engaged both the intellect and the heart. The influence of classical literature, particularly the works of Ovid and Boethius, is evident in pre-Elizabethan poetry. Poets engaged with mythological themes, moral philosophy, and philosophical dialogues, bridging the gap between the classical past and the evolving English literary tradition. The art of translation flourished during this period, bringing classical and continental European works to English readers. Poets like John Gower and Geoffrey Chaucer translated and adapted stories from Latin, French, and Italian sources, contributing to the dissemination of broader literary influences. The poetic forms and conventions of pre-Elizabethan poetry laid the groundwork for the flourishing Renaissance period that followed. The mastery of various meters, the exploration of rhyme schemes, and the experimentation with language foreshadowed the diversity of techniques that would come to define English poetry in the Elizabethan era and beyond. English pre-Elizabethan poetry stands as a mosaic of voices, cultures, and perspectives. It reflects the fusion of historical events, religious beliefs, artistic innovations, and human experiences. Exploring these early poetic treasures not only provides insight into the literary evolution of the English language but also offers a profound connection to the creative impulses of those who lived centuries ago. English pre-Elizabethan poetry encompasses a wide spectrum of genres and influences that contribute to its richness and diversity. From epic narratives to personal lyrics, this era showcases the multifaceted nature of poetic expression during a time of cultural transformation. The emergence of courtly love poetry during the Middle English period added a layer of sophistication to the poetic landscape. Poets like Chaucer and the anonymous author of Sir Orfeo explored themes of romantic longing, chivalry, and unrequited desire. These works often depicted the complexities of love within the context of medieval courtly ideals. The mystery plays and morality plays of this era provide a unique glimpse into the dramatic forms that preceded the Renaissance theatre. These plays, often performed as part of religious festivals, utilized poetic language to convey biblical stories, moral lessons, and allegorical narratives to a diverse audience. Devotional poetry, particularly that centered around the Virgin Mary, was a prominent genre. Poems like The Prick of Conscience combined didacticism with religious reflection, guiding readers toward spiritual enlightenment and moral introspection. The prevalence of manuscript culture influenced the dissemination of poetry. Manuscripts were often illuminated with intricate designs, showcasing the collaborative effort of scribes, artists, and poets. These manuscripts were valued not only for their content but also as artistic and cultural artifacts. Pre-Elizabethan poetry also engaged with social and political commentary. John Skelton, for example, employed satire and invective in his works to critique the clergy, the monarchy, and societal norms. Skelton's The Bogey of Court is a satirical allegory that lampoons the courtly world. The linguistic shifts that occurred during this period are evident in the evolution of vocabulary and syntax. The interplay between Old English roots, Anglo-Norman borrowings, and emerging Middle English constructions reflects the dynamic nature of language adaptation and change. The themes of wandering, exile, and journeying are recurrent motifs in pre-Elizabethan poetry. Poets like The Wanderer and The Seafarer evoke a sense of nostalgia for lost homes and the impermanence of worldly existence. These themes resonate with the cultural and historical uncertainties of the time. The significance of patronage cannot be underestimated in this era. Many poets were connected to royal or noble patrons who supported their work. Patronage influenced the themes, subjects, and even ideologies that found expression in poetic compositions. The influences of neighboring cultures, including French, Latin, and Scandinavian, contributed to the diversity of pre-Elizabethan poetry. These cross-cultural exchanges enriched the literary landscape and shaped the development of English poetic forms. In immersing ourselves in the realm of English pre-Elizabethan poetry, we uncover a mosaic of voices, forms, and influences that reveal the intricate interplay of history, culture, and creativity. These poems serve as time capsules, preserving the thoughts, aspirations, and emotions of individuals whose lives are separated from us by centuries, yet whose words continue to resonate and captivate. English pre-Elizabethan poetry invites us to explore even deeper layers of literary innovation, cultural exchange, and poetic experimentation that define this dynamic era. Beyond the already mentioned aspects, there are several more facets that contribute to the richness of this period. Medieval romances, such as Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, exemplify the blending of chivalric ideals with supernatural elements. These tales of quests, challenges, and knightly honor transport readers to a world where courage and virtue are tested against otherworldly forces. The concept of courtly love, a central theme in much of the poetry of this era, introduced a new dimension to romantic expression. Poets like Chaucer and John Gower explored the complexities of desire, admiration, and devotion within the context of aristocratic courts. Lyrical poetry, known for its brevity and emotional resonance, blossomed during this period. These lyric poems captured fleeting moments of beauty, love, and melancholy. The works of the troubadours and troubadours, who influenced English lyric poetry, celebrated the joys and sorrows of both courtly and common experiences. The influence of the oral tradition on pre-Elizabethan poetry is evident in the recurrence of repetition, refrains, and patterns of sound. These elements, designed to engage the ear and facilitate memorization, demonstrate the performative nature of poetry in medieval culture. Medieval allegory, characterized by the use of symbolic narratives to convey moral or philosophical lessons, thrived during this era. Poems like Pearl and Piers Plowman used allegorical devices to explore theological themes, social critiques, and ethical dilemmas. Cross-cultural exchanges with neighboring regions brought diverse literary traditions into English poetry. Poets drew inspiration from Scandinavian sagas, Celtic myths, and French troubadour poetry, resulting in a rich tapestry of influences that contributed to the development of English poetic forms. The role of women in pre-Elizabethan poetry is an area of increasing scholarly interest. Poets like Julian of Norwich and Marjorie Kemp offered unique perspectives on spirituality, mysticism, and personal experiences. Their writings challenge traditional narratives and illuminate the diversity of voices within this era. The evolving role of English in poetry is noteworthy. As the language underwent shifts and transformations, poets navigated the challenges and possibilities of expressing complex ideas, emotions, and narratives in an ever-changing linguistic landscape. Religious drama, such as mystery and miracle plays, formed an integral part of the poetic scene. These dramatic performances, often enacted during religious festivals, engaged audiences in vivid retellings of biblical stories and moral allegories. Pre-Elizabethan poetry offers a window into the cultural, religious, and social contexts of a world in flux. These poems not only preserve the thoughts and emotions of their time but also provide a platform for modern readers to connect with the shared human experiences that transcend historical boundaries. As we uncover the layers of this poetic legacy, we encounter an intricate mosaic that continues to inspire and captivate. Diving deeper into the world of English pre-Elizabethan poetry, we unveil additional dimensions that showcase the complexity and diversity of this era's literary landscape. The concept of courtly literature permeated many poetic works, reflecting the ideals of noble courts and chivalry. Themes of honor, loyalty, and the pursuit of excellence colored these poems, providing insight into the cultural values of the aristocracy. The influence of the Arthurian legend was profound, shaping the narrative scope of pre-Elizabethan poetry. Tales of King Arthur, the Knights of the Round Table, and quests for the Holy Grail captured the imagination of poets and audiences alike, giving rise to a vibrant body of Arthurian poetry. Translations and adaptations of classical texts brought Greco-Roman myths and stories to English readers. These adaptations, often crafted by scholars and poets, infused the mythological world with English sensibilities and perspectives. The interplay between oral and written traditions resulted in a dynamic exchange of ideas and stories. While manuscripts preserved poetic works in written form, the oral performance of poetry at courts, festivals, and gatherings added a layer of immediacy and communal engagement. Manuscript illuminations and marginalia revealed the artistic collaboration that enhanced the visual and textual elements of poetry. The intricate designs, decorated letters, and illustrations enriched the sensory experience of engaging with these literary works. The troubadours of the Occitan tradition left an indelible mark on English pre-Elizabethan poetry. Their themes of courtly love, unrequited passion, and devotion resonated with English poets, leading to the adaptation and incorporation of these themes into the English context. The cultural crossroads of medieval England is evident in the linguistic diversity of poetry. Latin, Old English, Middle English, and even Anglo-Norman elements mingled to create a linguistic landscape that reflected the rich tapestry of the era's cultural interactions. Poetic forms like the rondo and virilai, borrowed from the French troubadour tradition, found their way into English poetry. These fixed forms, characterized by intricate rhyme schemes and musicality, challenged poets to craft verses that adhered to specific structural constraints. The prevalence of allegorical poetry allowed poets to explore abstract concepts through vivid narratives. The works of poets like William Langland and Piers Plowman employed allegory to depict the journey of the soul, morality, and the struggles of the human condition. As we journey through English pre-Elizabethan poetry, we unearth a tapestry woven from myriad threads, artistry, spirituality, mythology, and cultural fusion. These poems serve as bridges between eras, connecting us to the thoughts and emotions of the past while reminding us of the enduring power of human creativity and expression. The influence of medieval romance extended beyond Arthurian legends to include stories of other legendary figures, both historical and fictional. Tales of Charlemagne, Alexander the Great, and other heroic figures provided ample material for poets to craft narratives that stirred the imagination. The role of women as patrons and poets is a compelling aspect of this era. While often overshadowed, women like Marie de France and Christine de Pizan made significant contributions to literature, infusing their works with a distinct female perspective and challenging prevailing gender norms. The concept of ubiquitous translation characterized this period, with many works being translated across different languages. Poets were not only creators but also intermediaries between cultures, bridging the gap between the linguistic diversity of the medieval world. The mingling of secular and religious themes in poetry reflects the complex relationship between the divine and the mundane. Poems like the Ancrine Vis offer guidance to anchorites and nuns in their spiritual lives, while incorporating elements of lyrical beauty and poetic expression. The tradition of flitting, or poetic exchanges of insults and challenges, showcases the competitive and performative nature of poetry during this era. Poets engaged in verbal duels, often employing clever wordplay and biting satire to outwit their opponents. The emergence of estate satire critiqued the three traditional estates of society: the clergy, the nobility, and the commoners. Through humor and satire, poets like Langland and Chaucer highlighted the flaws and hypocrisies of each estate, providing social commentary within their narratives. The use of litotes, a rhetorical device involving understatement, added subtlety and complexity to poetic expression. By employing negation to imply the opposite, poets crafted layers of meaning that invited readers to engage in deeper interpretation. The association of music with poetry was prevalent, and the blending of melodies with verses created a multisensory experience. Poets often compose lyrics intended to be sung, emphasizing the interconnectedness of auditory and textual art forms. The motif of pilgrimage, both physical and spiritual, continued to resonate in pre-Elizabethan poetry. This motif symbolized the human journey through life, replete with challenges, trials, and opportunities for growth and redemption. The intertextual nature of pre-Elizabethan poetry reveals a web of references and influences that shaped the works of poets. Poetic echoes, allusions, and interconnections highlight the ongoing conversation among poets across time and space. As we further explore English pre-Elizabethan poetry, we journey into a world of dynamic narratives, poetic rivalries, gender dynamics, and cultural exchanges. These poems not only reflect the aesthetic sensibilities of their era but also offer a mirror through which we can contemplate the intricate tapestry of human experiences, aspirations, and creativity that have transcended the centuries. The blending of oral and written traditions gave rise to the concept of authorship, as we understand it today. Many of the poets of this era remained anonymous, with their works being attributed to the collective poetic tradition rather than individual creators. The intertwining of religion and secularism is evident in the poetry of this time. While devotional works expressed spiritual devotion and moral guidance, secular themes of love, adventure, and human interaction provided a counterpoint that mirrored the diverse facets of medieval life. The influence of the courtesy book genre, which offered advice on manners, etiquette, and courtly behavior, is reflected in the poetry of the era. These texts provided a cultural blueprint for courtly conduct, impacting the portrayal of social interactions in poetic narratives. The connection between poetry and memory was profound. The mnemonic techniques embedded in poetic forms facilitated memorization, enabling poets and performers to transmit their verses across generations and geographical distances. Regional diversity is a noteworthy aspect, with various dialects and accents shaping the linguistic landscape of pre-Elizabethan poetry. Poets celebrated local cultures and traditions, contributing to a sense of cultural identity that existed alongside broader English literary developments. The emergence of poetic guilds and societies fostered a sense of community among poets. These groups provided a platform for poets to exchange ideas, collaborate on projects, and collectively contribute to the evolution of poetic forms and themes. The use of poetic forms such as the bob and wheel in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight added a unique rhythmic and structural element to English poetry. These forms demonstrated the flexibility and adaptability of English prosody. The exploration of morality, often through allegory and didactic poetry, served as a moral compass for readers. Works like The Vision of Piers Plowman and The Cloud of Unknowing sought to guide individuals toward spiritual enlightenment and ethical living. Poetry served as a vehicle for social commentary, critiquing institutions, societal norms, and political power structures. Poets used satire and irony to challenge authority and prompt reflection on the complexities of human behavior. The legacy of pre-Elizabethan poetry extends into the later periods of English literature, influencing even modern-day poets. The themes, techniques, and perspectives woven into these early works continue to resonate and inspire contemporary poets, forming an enduring bridge between the past and the present.